can continue and tell your story. And talk to us about the impact of the school on Newark.
Yes, I came to the Newark School of Theology in 1998, a year after it was established. And I was influenced by your book, Norman, because when I went to school, I thought that, theological school, I thought that they were going to give me some kind of dogma. But then when I bumped into that book, and I saw all the historical data, all the research, it opened my mind and I said to myself, you better read this book. I grew up in El Salvador. In 1957 I was born, so by the time you were writing the book I was probably 3 years old. But I felt the impact, for example, of the Cuban Revolution, and I always put that as a reference, because the Cuban Revolution stirred Latin America for change, which never came, by the way. I'm from El Salvador. I came to New York City in 1977, just before the war erupted. And so when I came to the city of New York, I decided I better go to school and do some technical education so that I can earn a living. And I did so. I graduated from what is now New York City Tech, the City College of New York, Polytechnic Institute, which is now part of NYU. And I landed a very nice job at AT&T Bell Labs in 1984. And so my career was set. But, I always had a desire to learn more about the humanities and things like that. And as a kid, I stopped going to church because I saw that the church and the government were married and they were controlling the power. And therefore, I did not want to be part of that church as I saw it. But, as an adult, I came back to the Christian faith, which I came from that faith. And I started going to different churches, but then I saw so many things that I did not like, and I visited numerous churches. And at one point I said to myself, these churches are not doing the work that I need. I need to do something else, and that's how I found the Newark School of Theology. And from the moment that I met Dr.R.D, and I started taking classes, I think I'm one of the students who have taken all the classes in the school. I've earned 3 certificates there. I have never stopped learning. And
More classes than any other student.
And then I decided that, I was going to pursue this in a serious manner.
Yes.
By this time, our company has become Lucent Technologies, Alcatel-Lucent, and I'm feeling like, this is not the right place for me anymore. I was a lead engineer making a lot of money. I always tell this to people, I was making a lot of money, and I decided to quit the job and went back to school. I went to General Theological Seminary to complete the Master of Divinity, which was done on a part-time basis except for the last year. And then I got involved in the process of ordination, and it was delayed for a year, so I went back and I took another master's degree in sacred theology. And by 2014, I was already a priest, and I decided to do something with the education. Dr. Bendall and I have been talking about helping the Diocese of El Salvador to bring some theological education, and we started our conversation there. And the more we talked, the people at the diocese decided that they needed a seminary to train the future priests. And so I was involved from the very beginning. On 2013, we started offering classes in theology for the future priests. And I bring the story of the Bible from the prophetic voice, because people tend to read the Bible literally. God says so. But then I always say, okay, that's what God says, but listen to what the leaders are saying. You're supposed to confront those who are corrupt. You have to call out those who treat you badly. You have the right to organize. You have the right of an education. You have the right of life that have been taken away from the people. So I know what the nun is talking about when we saw the chart. When I was a kid, we started working at 5, 6 years of age, because we had a poor family. We were 9 brothers and sisters. I got up early in the morning to go to work, 7, 6 years old. I went to pick up coffee crops when I was like 12 years old to buy a pair of shoes. And so very early on I realized education is the way to liberate the mind. And I did not know that from reading a book. Later on, as I started to read John Sobrino, Gustavo Gutierrez, Leonardo Boff, then it made sense to me. And more I realized that the work that you did in terms of Marx's teaching and the study of Marx. By the way, in my country, if you were found with a book that has to do with Marx, you would be killed on the spot. That would be a death sentence. And so I never ventured to read that book in El Salvador. But when I came to the United States, now that I have access to the language, because when I came here, I couldn't speak English. And I couldn't read it, and I couldn't write it. And so education is also helping me to do that. So now I'm able to read very sophisticated books. I'm reading the Hernandez, I'm reading Capital, and I'm trying to interpret what they're saying, what Marx is saying. And I said to myself, how can the government of El Salvador used to say that the peasants were reading this book, and that's why they killed them? You have to be a philosophy student or well-versed students to be able to comprehend that book. Which brings me to the present, In El Salvador, we were told the idea that revolution was going to change things. And a revolution sort of took place in El Salvador. But the leaders of that revolution betrayed the people. They enriched themselves. They're multimillionaires. They have received money from Brazil, from Venezuela, and they have established companies, and they are wealthy. Meanwhile, the people who fought the war, the soldiers and the guerrillas, don't have not even a pension. They were never recognized. And so right now, our society is in turmoil again. Now we don't call it a civil war, we call it a social war, in which the poor are trying to survive in an economy that now is using the dollar as the money. And so everything has become super expensive. Try to buy a house in El Salvador, you're thinking about, in a poor neighborhood, $30,000. In a medium sort of kind of society with certain facilities, maybe $150,000. And the wealthy are living by the volcano in mansions that are worth millions of dollars. From the volcano, you can see the BMWs, the Mercedes-Benz, Maseratis. And then you find people in the street that cannot even have money for food. Some of them make $1 a day. So it seems to me that the work is needed in El Salvador. We're working with the diocese there, and these people are eager to learn. And every time that I bring an idea and I say, why don't we look at the perspective of, for example, sexuality and spirituality? And they say, we need to learn more about that in a country that is very conservative. So recently we went with two professors from General Theological Seminary and did a workshop. It turns out that part of doing this work at the church and at the school have allowed me also to become an interpreter. I can do a lot of interpretation, even when people are speaking alive, I can have developed that skill. So I'm using all those skills, and I'm trying to tell people that education is the way to liberate ourselves. That's the approach that I bring also to my community. I started working in West Orange, New Jersey, the church called Holy Trinity. And the moment we got there, I realized that the children in the summer have nothing to do. It's a very poor area. And so I established a program in the summer for about 5 weeks. We meet on Saturday for 2 hours with the idea for the students to first read the Bible. We read the first 2 chapters of the book of Genesis, because I'm trying to instill in them that we have to protect the environment. But also I teach them mathematics. It turns out that I developed the skills of mathematics on my own, because by the time I was going to school in the 60s and 70s, most of the time the professors and the teachers were on strike. And my mother was very happy when she said, well, you don't go to school, go sell something. We can put you to work. And I realized then that the kids were back at school, and then I would go and register myself. And I was able to, advance. And so education seems to me is the way to prepare people for the future. And having that kind of literature where we are exposed to the social sciences that give us the interpretation as to what the reality is where we live. And and those people who have accumulated the wealth, they did not inherit that from the people, that it was taken away from them. So we have to re-examine our own history, because the Spaniards came and they conquered us. They defeated us. So we are defeated people. We are conquered people. And then on top of that, the people who became the elite were the ones who they only took care of themselves. And the rest of the people, nothing. But now things are changing. I tell people the winds of change are coming to El Salvador. The youth are mobilizing. And they're using social media to connect and educate. And there are people in El Salvador, like a professor from the Lutheran University of El Salvador, Dagoberto Gutierrez. He's a philosopher. By profession, he's a lawyer, so he teaches law. But at the same time, he uses philosophy to teach people to liberate their mind, because we need to liberate ourselves. In order to liberate ourselves, we have to really come to the front and say, the system must change. We cannot continue like this. It's like the environment. We cannot continue to destroy the environment. Capitalism has failed, and we know that. But we have to admit it, and then we have to come together as a community and organize, because we have to protect the environment. To conclude, I decided to pursue a doctoral degree, and because I'm an engineer, I know a lot of mathematics, and I have studied theology. I decided to do my dissertation on something that I call God and Science, and I decided to tackle the problem of water quality in West Orange. And I realized that water, is life. If we don't take care of the water, if we allow fracking to continue, we are going to destroy this beautiful planet that we have. And so that's my call to all of us, is to organize in meaningful ways. Thanks.
Thank you so much.